Hey everyone, I'm so excited to finally show you the mural I painted on my studio wall. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, please go and watch that first, because that's where I talk about the planning process right up to how I sketched it all out on the wall. And I give you a bit of a backstory about why, for me, doing this project was so important and really a dream come true. In this video, I'm gonna share the actual painting part and show you the big reveal. Oh, and I said that I did make one big mistake in the last video, and today I'm gonna tell you what that is. Some of you did guess it, but I'm gonna confirm your suspicions. But first, welcome to the channel. My name is Mr. Tom Froze, and I'm an illustrator and a top teacher on Skillshare, where I've helped unlock the world of commercial illustration to well over 100,000 students. But enough about me, let's just jump into it. So just a quick recap. In part 1, I got the sketch ready and traced it up onto the wall. In the sketch, I plan to have this big white dove over this dark color. And while I was thinking about that, I was wondering if I should use the white of the wall that was already there and just kind of paint the dark color around it, or if I should paint everything dark and then paint the white dove over it. I thought maybe that could save some time and maybe save a little paint. Maybe that would even help make the shape of the dove really pop forward. But in the end, I decided to paint the white dove over the dark color because I knew that some of that dark color would come through a bit and kind of resemble the way I illustrate digitally for my usual client work. So as I finished sketching everything up on the wall, like tracing from the projector with a pencil, that was at the end of my first day, and I realized that I made a big mistake. And some of you guessed it. Yeah, I'm actually just thinking about that now. I just drew this whole thing up on the wall in white, but I think I might have to, in some way, draw it over again. Because I was painting a dark color over everything, that was gonna cover the sketch. So I ended up having to trace my projection all over again, but fortunately that only took about 15 minutes. Anyway, moving on to the second day, I basically prepped the wall by putting some tape up, and then I put the 2 coats of the dark color up on the wall. And that was really all I could do until the paint dried. Moving on to day 3, that was really when things started to come together. I did pretty much get all the main solid shapes up and also the lettering. The hardest part for sure was the lettering, and I'm gonna get into that separately, but as I went along and experienced this first time painting a mural, I definitely developed some techniques during the process that I'll definitely use the next time I want to do a mural. You know, just for starters, I assumed that I would have to carefully paint all the edges in, like the scalloped edges of the dove and the lettering, and do all that with smaller paintbrushes. But I ended up first using my Posca paint pens to outline everything first. And the strokes coming from those paint pens are really thin compared to brushes, but they were just thick enough to give me a nice crisp line to color within. So I definitely say if you're planning a wall mural yourself, consider using paint pens that match the colors you're going to be painting with. So this was a funny little mistake I made. As I was outlining things, I noticed the downstroke of the letter P. It terminated too soon. It actually looked more like a D. So I was able to quickly throw the projection of the sketch back up on the wall and make that correction. You know, another tip before we move on to the lettering is that the darker colors will come through the brighter ones. So if you want your brights to be as bright as possible, it's good to prime those areas with white first. So let's get on with the lettering now. I'd started using my 1-inch wall paint brush to sort of carefully paint in the outlines that I'd made with my Posca pen, but because I wasn't able to lay down the paint in nice, long, continuous strokes, it was looking really patchy. It didn't have a nice, smooth uniformity to it that I was hoping for. In part 1, I showed you some of the brushes that I bought at the hardware store, and one of those was these little 2-inch thick foam rollers. And this was a super lucky coincidence. The stroke thickness of my scripty letters was exactly the same as the little mini foam rollers. The trickiest part of the lettering really was just in the beginning, just figuring out how I was gonna do it without looking patchy and rough, and these rollers pretty much saved the day. So at the end of day 3, with the main shapes and the lettering painted in, I called it another day and I went home excited to come back to the details the next day. Hey, it's still me. This is just a quick word from my sponsor, Mr. Tom Froese, to let you know about his growing number of illustration classes on Skillshare. I'm proud to be sponsored by Mr. Tom Froese because I'm such a fan of his classes. Okay, super cheesy cheese aside, my classes are truly my pride and joy because I know they've helped hundreds of thousands of students break into the world of commercial illustration. My classes are not just for creatives who want to learn how to illustrate on the technical side, but how to think more like an illustrator. As a teacher, I don't want to show you how to do what I do. I really want to build each class to help you discover more about what you do and how you do it. If you're watching this video after October 1st, 2022, you'll be able to take my latest class, Drawing is Important, Develop a Daily Sketchbook Habit in 30 days. This class is inspired by all the drawing I've been doing this year, including the monthly drawing meetups that inspired my studio mural, as well as my own drawing habit that I've been sharing over on Drawing is Important on Instagram. If you've been trying to make drawing part of your daily routine, I made this class for you. My classes are accessible and challenging to almost all levels of illustrator, from beginner to expert. Visit tomfroese.com/teaching to learn more. Okay, so I couldn't wait to get back on day 4 to add the finishing details to the mural. That meant adding the dark line details to the feet, the beak, and the sun, and of course adding a pupil in the dove's eye and a few other things. For this I used a 1/2-inch artist brush meant for acrylic painting, and this time I didn't mind the strokes having a different quality than the paint strokes and textures in the bigger shapes, since these strokes were for a different stylistic element. I also like how the lines went on a little bit wobbly too. I used the same brush, the same 1/2-inch brush for all the lines, making them all the same thickness and quality, which creates a more consistent look all around. So as part of the final look, I really wanted the bigger shapes to be mostly even in color, but also to have some texture and variation in them. So I intentionally let the roller and the brush strokes somewhat visible. Whether it could still use a bit more evening out, I suppose that's just a matter of taste. As you can imagine, with the shapes, the trickiest part was just painting them in with precision and having that mostly even texture I'm talking about. I think at the end of the day, it's pretty impossible to have a perfectly even texture if you're using different kinds of brushes. And again, I don't mind a bit of variation and imperfection here. I really think it adds to the character of the final design. Anyway, without further ado, here is the final mural in all its glory. I'm really pleased with it, and I think it adds a lot to my studio space. Before, it was just a blank white walled room, and now it really feels like my own special place. In terms of time, the whole thing took about 20 hours over 4 days. So just a quick recap. On day 1, I planned the sketch and traced it up on the wall. On day 2, I got both coats of the base color up. And then on day 3, I added the main shapes. And then on day 4, I added the line details and made some nice little finishing touches. I'm actually surprised it didn't take that long, like that it only really took about 20 hours. And really the thing that I felt like I had to wait the longest for was for the paint to dry. While I did need to be careful and patient with the details of the painting, I think the hardest part really over everything else was just in the planning stage, including coming up with an idea I really thought was worth putting up on my wall in the first place. That for me is really the hardest part for almost all the things I work on. You know, just asking myself, what's the idea and why should I choose that over all the other possibilities? And then feeling good about the decision I made. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you watched both parts, you'll remember this whole idea was inspired by drawing with my patrons in one of our drawing meetups. If you'd like to join us sometime, you can become a patron for only $3 a month. This gives you access to monthly live Draw With Me meetups, plus my growing catalog of past sessions, all exclusive to my patrons. And by being a patron, it's a great way to support what I'm doing here on this channel. Visit patreon.com/tomfroese and sign up today. And if Patreon's not your thing, don't worry about it. All I ask is that maybe you like this video, hit that subscribe button, and tell a friend. All right, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.